Hi, welcome to Sex and Society. I'm Valerie Baber, and I have a special guest in studio with me today for the very first ever video episode of Sex and Society. This is Amy Taylor. Now, I've had my eye on Amy for a while. I don't know if you remember this, but I interviewed you for an article that I wrote for Sexpert magazine. Thank you for doing that. I asked you to offer your wisdom as an expert, as a seductress. And you were very kind to offer that to me. Amy is not only an expert seductress, she is a men's magazine model. She's been seen in magazines like FHM, Playboy, Maxim, internationally. She is a pilot. She has a graduate degree. She's tried the business world for a while, wasn't really into it, so tried a bunch of other things, has been very successful at many things, and is currently making her bread and butter off being a private entertainer. What would you call it? Like, you're a professional companion.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So I do all of those things. I guess I've tried lots of things, remain eternally curious. So, but yeah, as a private entertainer, I'm a companion to typically one or two at a time, small group of people, and those relationships evolve and often change. And in a pretty traditional, old-fashioned sense that works for both parties, these people have provided for me. The reason they do is largely that frees up your schedule so that you can be there with them for events and trips and you name it. It's almost, some of it's therapy sometimes, travel on their schedule. Because I think in today's overloaded world, if two people are working a bunch of different jobs, their schedules are very rarely going to match. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people of means want sort of attention on demand, and that turns out to be something that you can monetize as a career.
Which I think is really smart, and I've had some experience with myself, but I think there are so many people who would take issue with that.
Yes.
And you're very brave to be very, very out about it.
Yeah. I was outed. That was not my choice.
Oh.
The first few years that I was a companion, like most, I was in the closet. That was not because I was ashamed or upset about what I was doing. I was completely independent, not being controlled, quite happy. But it was because of norm enforcement in society that, my family would have been ashamed. It's not something, I liken it to people who are, LGBTQ and not out of the closet yet. Sometimes you're trying to save the people you love from the stigma that will happen to them, or maybe their own fear that they won't understand, and that they won't believe you that you're okay with your choices. So I was closeted for a long time, and sure, I probably preferred it that way, but somebody did the outing for me. And then,
thank you.
Yeah, right. That was great.
Was that a client or a former model, like a colleague who was angry with you, or what kind of person would do that?
It was a person who runs a website and tries to gain control of companions via the internet, and who I refused to be controlled by. And so it was an act of vengeance. It was a man he's a real bad person. When you're dealing with pretty women, whether it's modeling or acting or in the sort of hashtag Me Too era, we're seeing a lot of stuff where the casting couch stuff is getting revealed, or in companionship, you're talking about I hate to say commodity, but you're talking about someone who's got a lot of power. You're young and you're beautiful, and that can get you a lot of money and attention and things. And so there's people that are parasites on that, and they want to profit from it, and they want to control your career. This happens in acting and in modeling and certainly in companionship. And this gentleman wanted to be in charge of who I met, when, and how. I unceremoniously told him to go fuck himself, which turned out to be a bad idea. I didn't really know who I was messing with. I was young, feisty, and he outed me, and then he tried to really hurt me, and I had to go to court. I won, and then I had to put him in prison.
Oh, wow.
I did. Yeah.
Don't mess with Amy.
Well,
and don't out people. What they're doing is absolutely none of your business.
It's not other story to tell.
Right.
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 And people get there at the speed they do, right? I think I'm out now, but I wasn't there then.
Well, and it seems like it's working out for you. You have just a ton of followers, and it doesn't stop you from getting work that in all of these magazines, very well-known magazines. And I'm not sure if you're still flying, but you seem to really be thriving despite it. But I know that there you must still face stigma, and I'm sure that some people who are watching this or are listening to this are
Every
like,
day.
oh, there's got to be something wrong with her that she's taking control of her life like this. And
Yeah.
so that's why I wanted you to come in, as I wanted to sort of humanize you and women like you and show them how beautiful and intelligent and accomplished and solid that women in this industry can be, and how much wisdom you have to share, and you're really beneficial to society. So I hope that people who had misconceptions or preconceived notions about women like yourself can watch or listen to this and go, okay, well, maybe I'm a little bit wrong.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm certainly not a perfect person. I'm flawed and have made mistakes and will continue to make many, like anybody else. But I am as more or less okay as anybody else. And I think the judgment that happens is partially a result of closeting. When something is unknown, people they fill the gap in their minds with all kinds of the sort of worst of it, right? And that is to say, if you're going to have a spectrum of what I guess now is being called sex work, it's a funny term because it's not at all always sex.
Well, you don't sell sex because that would be illegal. You sell your time as a companion, would you call yourself an escort? Is that a word that you use?
Well, that was the term, but then they just decided that meant prostitute.
Right.
And not only is that illegal, whether or not you agree with these laws, I think they tend to make things worse, but criminalizing it, that's another issue. But not only is it illegal, but it should not be expected. It should.
Right.
No one is entitled to that. I fuck who I want, when I want, how I want, and for the reasons that I want.
Right.
And no one is entitled to have sex with me because they gave me anything, not jobs or money or jewelry or dinner on dates. And I'm sure, there is a certain entitlement to sex. Like, I mean, when people date on Tinder, a lot of guys are like, I bought her dinner. I should get to. I think that's coercion, and it's sort of gross, right?
Right. So you're not, that's not what you're selling. Nobody's entitled, but you have met more men. I don't know if you've met more men than the average woman, because I think a lot of the average girl is meeting a lot of people on Tinder, but you just handle it in a different way. You're a professional muse. So I feel like that gives you a different perspective on sexuality and eroticism and relationships and romance. And I feel like you know on a different level what's missing in society, what's missing in long-term relationships. I imagine that some of your clients are themselves in relationships.
Yes.
And so you act as sort of a therapist to them.
Yeah, it fills a gap. And the reasons that men spend time with companions are as varied as the men themselves. Sometimes, they're lacking attention. They're lacking friendship. Some of them have been sort of residually angry about old fights and things, and they don't feel as intimate and connected with their wife. I think probably counseling would be better than spending time with somebody else, but they handle things how they handle them. Some of them, the saddest thing is sometimes when the only sin their wife has committed was to get old, and they're just physically more attracted to somebody younger. That breaks my heart. But on the other hand, that's their body, and that's the mechanism by which they're attracted. And I suppose some of them probably wish they weren't wired that way themselves, but people are different.
So I get this as a dating coach, an intimacy coach. I have people come to me saying, what do I do to maintain intimacy with my partner, my boyfriend, my wife? We've been together for 7 years. We just had a baby. We're perfect roommates, but that flame just isn't there anymore. What would you tell someone like that? Is there a go-to piece of advice?
It's fated for me in companionship arrangements that are many years long, and you can feel the sort of boredom and rote. And I don't know that I'm an authority on that, having never been with anybody. Big relationships for me were 7 to 8 years.
That's a pretty significant time.
Tried. I mean, I've never been married. I think it is tough. You're sort of expecting somebody to be compatible with you in ways that maybe aren't always true. I've seen people get pretty kinky to try to keep things interesting. Polyamory, dungeons, BDSM. Some people, a lot of
Do
cheating.
you think that saves marriages, or
Saves. I think it just is.
it just adds a little spice for a minute and then
I think it works for some of them, right? I think it's so hard.
So what do you think about monogamy? Are we living a lie if we're getting married and saying it's one person that's going to take care of all of our needs for the rest of our lives? Are we lying to ourselves? You're
I think some people are. I think some people can do it, and it's great because monogamy is probably better for raising a family. Stability is better for kids. They are probably too young to understand. Lots of stop and start in relationships while their brains are forming. You don't really want to have instability, right?
Right.
That said, it doesn't work for a lot of people, and it probably comes from an era. I mean, the turn of the century, the average lifespan was 40. Now it's 80. So we're going to have to reckon with it now that if we're getting married in our early 20s and we're living to be 90, this is a much different picture of what happens.
Right. There are so many romantics who just don't want to face that, though. We just like to tell ourselves, we're in love and it's going to be like that forever. Of course, we'll find our way just because the gods are smiling on us because we're in love. We'll figure it out. And they don't address difficult situations like how are we going to raise the kids? What kind of religion are we going to raise the kid with? What's going to happen when I go through menopause, when you lose your job, when we move to a different state, or when we just get bored with each other and the dungeons aren't working anymore.
And men have erectile dysfunction if they get less healthy and or older.
Yes.
Cardiovascular disease can affect it. So there are women who they get a side piece or all kinds of things happen because the husband is unable to perform. And for some women, it's a real physical need.
So I'm glad you brought that up because that was something that I had in my notes. I recently spoke with a friend who listens to the podcast, and he said you have to talk about Viagra or libido enhancers as a novelty item, or what's the word? People take it for recreation, and he's right. And I can't believe that I didn't bring it up before. I've noticed this myself. This is so frustrating for me. Have you encountered this? That guys are just, I think that this is what I think is happening. I think they're watching way too much porn and they're under the impression that porn is their only source of sex education.
Yes.
They think that this is what real sex looks like, that you need to be rock solid and 8 inches long and you need to jackhammer someone for hours on end. And only then can you be a stud in the bedroom.
Indeed.
And that's very, very inaccurate.
Indeed.
Do you find that this happens?
Men's deepest insecurity is the performance, I would say. I would bet money that it is. And so, right, what they think is good performance, where else are they going to get information but the media? And it's porn right now.
Try communicating with your partner.
One would think we need more of you. I don't know.
Right.
Let's get the old HMOs to cover visits with you. And people, counselors and doctors. And of course, American sex education is rubbish. But we have language. There's sexual ego is pretty normal. Women want to be considered good in bed too. I knew a guy once who said, men don't tell women that most of you guys are pretty solidly mediocre at giving head. We just don't tell you because we don't want you never to do it because mediocre's head is better than no head. So
I wonder what that means now. What is mediocre?
I don't think I'm that good. Nobody's ever given me a standing ovation. But we say things to men like, you didn't make her come.
Yes.
Don't you find that
weird?
Make her.
It's violent. It's aggressive. Why would you make her? Why wouldn't
you?
And
that your
gently
penis has some magic power.
Right.
You don't make somebody come. You're there along the ride when they come.
Right. You're sharing a moment.
Yeah.
You're working on magic together.
Right. And so these guys get so much pressure. Like, I got to make her come and I gotta, my rod has to be like, all this. And from porn probably. And from maybe bad sex, especially older men from previous generations. The lay back and think of England thing, with the girls would just starfish because good girls weren't too sexy
to enjoy sex or be okay with any part of their sexuality. It was like a marital duty.
And it's even more surreptitious than that. To some degree, a lot of women, when they want to get the ring and get wifed up, they dole out sex very carefully because being too sexual and being too slutty actually can intimidate the guy and make him think he's not enough or that he'll get cheated on and be less likely to want her as the wife and mother of his kids.
There's so
the
much.
hypersexual woman can actually be sort of a threat, and men will marry the sort of Madonna and then cheat with the whore, and compartmentalize women in one of two baskets because both are safer. The Madonna, I have kids with her, I wife her, it's going to be terrible sex, I'll probably cheat on her, but she's going to raise my kids and be good for society. And then I'm going to cheat with the exciting, crazy, sexy one.
Right.
And one woman can't possibly be both because that would be too scary.
Right.
Right?
So it sounds like there's a lot of lying and deception and really difficult. We're denying who we are and nature so that we can protect egos.
Maybe, or just raise kids. I mean,
You know,
we built our society. I mean, women get most of their status by becoming wives and mothers in our society and sort of being less sexual and more saintly. And that's elevated women, and that's their sort of form of power. And when you choose, as I've done, not to do that, you're sort of very weird and you're sort of a woman behaving a bit like a man. And I think men who don't act sexually powerful and take Viagra and tell their guy friends that they pounded her and she was screaming for more. And, you know, there's these sort of gender norms that elevate you to a man or a woman, respectively, with status. And I think we just follow them because that's what you get the cultural rewards for, right? Having a big hard cock for guys, it's mostly probably so your guy friends, when you go to a bar and you tell lies that aren't even true,
I made
that
her
they
come
think
6 times in 15 minutes.
Right. Of course you did, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She faked it because she was tired of your ass.
The
She's
faking.
like, get off me.
Well, and women, all wives' girlfriends know. I mean, I just read in Cosmo, they said like 80% of young women, like Cosmo magazine readers, were faking it with their boyfriends.
Are they faking it because they're so tired of this bad sex, or are they doing it because nowadays maybe they aren't acknowledged or they aren't seen as desirable unless they're very much like the girls in porn?
Sure. Or these guys are doing recreation. Even young men do recreational Viagra now to avoid like whiskey dick, right? They drink and they do
Well,
Viagra.
just stop drinking so much. Learn how to drink responsibly. What about that? I mean,
I agree. And use something other than your Viagra-induced hard dick. Like use your fingers, use your tongue. We need more foreplay in the world. But I think a lot of women don't feel entitled to demand it.
Touch with your hands that isn't on the genitals. Transparent communication, massage.
It's one of the
tantra.
sexiest things there is.
Well, I've had some tantra people in on the show before, and I am not a tantrika myself, but I'm really intrigued with this sort of mentality, and the approach that they take to sexuality. And I think there's something really special to it, and we have a lot to learn from it. Have you ever practiced this?
I went to a tantra teacher.
Okay, tell me about
I
that.
had her come to the Shutters Hotel for me, and this woman.
That sounds sexy.
It was like going to batting practice with Babe Ruth. Like, I realized this woman was so much better at sex than I have ever been. Like, and it was mostly her hands. She said every couple should have a massage table, was her theory.
I have one.
And you do?
I do.
I need to get one. Yeah, it's
They're
great.
good.
You
They're
can get
fun.
all around and get where you need to be. And then her
Highly
hands,
recommended.
she was gifted. She knew every inch of a human body.
Okay.
She was in her 50s and she'd studied this for decades. And yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable.
So how did that end up? Was it like a fancy hand job in the end, or was it
me.
like?
She got in and got on. And,
But it's a yoni massage.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be a spiritual experience. Did you find that you were closer to God?
I was close to something.
Okay.
I was shouting a lot of "Oh God!"
Oh, it was a spiritual experience.
Yeah, for me, it just felt incredible. I didn't get so into this sort of ethos of the Buddhism stuff but for me, it was the sensation was what I was interested in.
Okay.
And she was is a spectacular person. She lives in Santa Barbara and she's an expert, teaches classes, couples and singles. And yeah, if she was closer, I would go learn from her more because I felt things I didn't know my body could do. And what a gift to even know that you could feel that nice.
Yes.
And a lot of it was absolutely not about your genitals.
No.
Like you were saying, it's other
Breathing
kinds of touch.
and centering and being in the moment is so important. And it sounds so fluffy. And there are probably a lot of men who don't want that. They're just like, they're so goal oriented and like, I have this objective. I only have this amount of time. I need to hear her do this. But I feel like if they take that time, then they're going to exceed their goal.
Absolutely.
If they sort of nurture first and foremost.
Yeah.
Is there sort of if you had to give someone a sexual takeaway, a piece of sexual advice, how to be a better lover, how to surprise your partner in the bedroom tonight? Is there one or two pieces that
Take your time is a very good one. Yeah. It depends on your partner. Like, I've dated men who were really into lingerie. Yeah. Now, even if you're not, if you love that person, it's your person, do it for him.
So with the lingerie, that's tricky for me because it's beautiful. I love having it. It makes me feel more feminine to have it. And I love wearing it in pictures.
Okay.
But to actually wear it for someone is kind of like,
do you feel like performative?
I've got to do that. Yes. Yeah, it's a performance. It's not comfortable.
No.
You're probably going to rip it. It's way too expensive for it to be, pulled off.
That's why he has to buy it.
Right.
If I'm wearing it for you, you're buying it.
Yeah. Like the stockings are going to show. I can't really sit the way I want to. Something's going to fall down. It feels like such a duty for me, even though I get how visually it's awesome.
What about doing a duty for somebody that you care about, knowing that it's not necessarily your goal, but it makes somebody that you care about really happy? Is that, for me, that's not always the worst thing, as long as it's not all the time, every time. Like, perhaps my sexual ego overrides my desires for self-fulfillment, because I sometimes am happy to be the giver. It speaks to my ego. Like, look how great I am in bed. I'm the goddess, which is probably unhealthy mentally, but is it bad to do something as a duty if it doesn't harm you? I don't know.
No, not at all. But I think when it's all duty all the time.
Indeed.
Yes.
Sure.
We don't want to do that.
And you don't want to train them that you're some sort of
dolly
that's going to that doesn't have needs.
Right.
Well, right. And consent, you talked about, we're living in an era where the availability of porn and like these dolls that are coming out, and of course strip clubs and prostitutes and all the things, I worry about consent. I worry about, because it's very important that no matter how you met, no matter whether the person bought you a lobster or,
right.
Consent really matters. I think it's abusive when that isn't on the table.
I'm glad you brought consent up and dolls. There are, what do they call them? Sex doll brothels. Now, not so much in the U.S., at least none that I know of. They're not here yet, but I know that they're in Canada. They're all over Europe. And apparently they're increasing in popularity. And I personally have really mixed feelings about this. I can't decide where I stand still. And I first brought this up on the show like 6 months ago. What do you think about sex doll brothels? Is that damaging our relationships? Is it making it easy for men to be creepy? Or is it taking away jobs from sex workers? Or is it healthy? What do you have any thoughts on the matter?
Well, I listened to the episode you guys talked about it, and I think the takeaway that you guys said is it's a very mixed bag. It probably is all of those things. Right, so obviously a doll can't consent because it's a doll, so you wouldn't want to train people that consent isn't important. However, deviant desires exist, even abusive ones. You aren't going to have a society where you ever have people that don't have some pretty sick desires. So, is it better that we have people doing them with an inanimate object, a doll, than, kidnapping a sorority girl and doing it to her and then killing her because they don't want to get caught for it? I don't know. It's... Yeah, I've seen those sex dolls online. Obviously,
and they're gorgeous. They really are sexy, and I feel weird just
and
saying
the AI's getting good.
Hot.
Well, some of the AI is getting good, right? They talk back, and you can.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Are they? Do they have them for women? Are there boys?
There are men, but I can't imagine a lot of women. I imagine most women who go in to do that, of the few who go in to do that, are probably doing it to appease their partner. So the partner says, I really want to see you be with another man.
Yeah.
Why don't you be with this boy doll? It's like, I just feel like we do a lot of things to make our partners happy. So.
Yes, right. But men do too, right? Like, was that comedian who said that men never tell women that they have toilet paper pussy crumbles in
That's
their...
right. I heard
Big
that.
J. Okerson.
I heard that.
Yeah.
That was brought to my awareness like 12 years ago, and since then I've been hypersensitive.
Terrifying,
like,
right? Like, it's even like, I wonder if I've oh my God, please let me never have been that woman.
Use baby wipes. If you're about to engage in an intimate moment, you think it might happen during the day, just wipe with baby wipes, and you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Well, and yeah, I mean,
or if you have a bidet, but I don't.
Part of the beauty of dealing with another human being is the imperfections.
Yes.
Sex is inherently hilarious, right? It looks weird. It's funny. It can make funny noises. You know, you're naked, so you're vulnerable. It's a very silly thing. And I think dolls and toys, I mean, I certainly have an arsenal of toys, and they're all a good augment, but it's not a substitute for being with a human being. It doesn't satisfy in a way that being with a human that you want to be with, a human that you like. I've had plenty of bad sex with people I didn't like. That's not the greatest experience. I don't know. For some people, mediocre sex with somebody they're not that into is still better than no sex. People differ, right? Some people don't feel whole unless they're getting fucked once every couple weeks or whatever the frequency is that they need. So if a doll prevents them from going postal, I don't know.
But does a doll? I was watching a documentary before the show, and watching this guy say, it's so easy. There were two guys. It's easier. It's easier than having to have real relationships and real conversations with actual human women. I wish that I didn't have to have relationships with her. I mean, it seemed like
something's going on there.
Potentially encourage some. It could curb deviant behavior, but it could also encourage it.
Indeed.
Make people very antisocial.
Well, that's like
in the postal sort of way.
Porn does that. There's data on porn that it increases the desire for, you see what's in porn and then you want to do that yourself. And there is some data on them trying to coerce their partner to do that thing that porn star did in this video I like. There's also data that, other data that porn calms particularly young men down and is a sort of source of relaxation and satisfaction if they don't have much of a sex life. So the jury's out. I suspect it's the case. These guys who say that being with an AI doll is easier than being with a real woman, like, something's wrong with them.
I heard she's not judging me. They're deeply fearful of judgment. So there's a lot of insecurity there. And,
Indeed. I wonder if it's almost paranoia. Like, I'd like to know if the judgment is real or just perceived.
Probably perceived.
There was a sugar daddy site owner. I listened to him on a podcast, and he said that the number one thing men want from women is compliance.
Compliance. So I did a podcast with a man named Gautam Sharma. Who owned not that one. SugarDaddyForMe.com, and now I believe it's Lush Match. Or recently, it's turned into something else. There's been some renaming lately, but yes, one of the arrangements sites.
I think that's maybe his number one.
I agree. I don't think that's everybody's.
But that kind of guy might like a doll, right? That never says anything untoward.
Yeah, he might.
Other men quite
I should have asked him.
Yeah, here you go. It was it was lovely. I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed your volley with him.
Oh,
I did. As a woman, I was like, get him. But look, I mean, horses for courses. If you want a very compliant, submissive, that kind of thing. I mean, it's better to tie up and do that to a real doll than end up like the BTK killer and do it to live women. We don't want that in society. But I think other people like a flesh and blood partner who's, challenging and complex and sometimes even feisty. And I know a lot of men don't want somebody who always just says yes and does whatever you want. They would actually be quite bored by that.
Right.
So there's a wide spectrum for diversity in this world, and I think that's a good thing.
Another thing that you and I just spoke about was teacher-student affairs. And you actually revealed something really interesting to me in the lobby before the show. So it's perfect. Do you feel comfortable sharing the story?
Of course. Okay. So my mother was one of my father's students. Not in kindergarten, in university. But she was quite young, and he is considerably older.
So how old was she, and how old was he when they met?
She would have been a freshman in college, so I assume 18? 18? Probably, maybe 19,
Okay,
18.
So legal.
Yeah. And he's not quite 2 decades older. She is the third wife. He was already divorced. He was single when they met. They claim that they never dated until she was out of his class.
They claim.
My sister and I wondered.
Okay.
But that's the story.
I think you have to go with your gut. If you're feeling it, then there's probably some
they'd probably
truth
tell
to
us
it.
by now. But I mean, this was the 60s. So this was much more common then. Today you would become unceremoniously fired for doing that.
Right.
And he was kind of the cute professor, and women knew, she said. And she said she showed up to the first day of his class, it was in the 60s, with these boots, knee-high boots on that were red.
And a tiny skirt.
Red, tiny mini dress, like the 60s, with buttons all the way down the sleeves. And he said the first time he saw her, he was trying to think how long it would take to get all those buttons undone.
Wow.
So, it was, of course, in the beginning, like most in the beginnings, it was sexual chemistry. She probably had a thing for older dudes. And maybe for authority, because he was the professor. It's kind of sexy.
I admit, I've been there, done that.
Did you like older men for a while?
Yeah.
I think a lot of us did that phase. Yeah, I dated an older guy when I was in college. I don't know if it was a daddy thing. He wasn't like 70, but yeah.
I didn't date any professors or teachers, though. No. I had a crush on a teacher in high school, but
nothing ever happened?
it never turned into anything.
Do you think it was mutual?
I like to think so, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably good they didn't act on it.
Yes.
I had one professor at Cal. Oh my God, I would have hit it in a heartbeat if he had let me.
Oh.
He was brilliant, and he was an expert on the very field that I loved.
Which is?
Marine biology was, I wanted to be a biologist when I was young. Doesn't pay, and it's a tough life. But he was this world expert on what I thought was a really cool field, and he was cute, and nothing ever happened, but sure I would have. And the authority was a little sexy, right? It's probably a substitute daddy, because I just moved out of my house, gone to college, so there's probably some stuff there psychologically. This guy didn't take advantage of that, but he could have.
It is a little different when you get younger, though, and usually that's what's in the news, the high school, junior high.
So this stuff, I don't understand an attraction to somebody who's not an adult. That's a real hard one for me. Physically, it's not fully formed, and yet this exists in our world. Thank God. I think it's rare. I hope. And apparently it's a strong sexual preference that doesn't really go away. I don't think it's
maybe for these teachers, they need some
Right.
young dolls.
Okay, right.
But then you don't form the same relationship as you form with somebody who's in the classroom.
Well, and what is it about? Is it about the physical? Are you purely physically attracted to somebody that's not developed, or is it about power because you like somebody who hasn't experienced life yet, so you can sort of be the teacher?
Yeah.
I mean, that is a thing for a lot of people. They like to
Bit
be
of everything. Eroticism is a complicated thing. Sexual desire is complex.
It is. Sometimes I
Super
get
weird.
on the net and surf porn, and it gets real weird when I start searching for
Well, let's talk about that in the next segment, because we're out of time for now. But when we come back next week, we'll talk about what kind of porn we like to watch, and I'd love to discuss more of your really fascinating life.
Oh, thanks.
Okay,
Will do.
All right. Thanks for being with us this week. I'm Valerie Baber. This is Sex and Society. See you next time.